Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core plays for this week's Scottish Open. Gonna take a look at the top end of the Draftkings pricing and go through 4 of my foundational core plays for this week, and I'll be using in plenty of my GPP lineups, and also that you might want to consider before putting together your player pool for this week. Of course, last week Cam Young was the one real premier core play that we had. It had a good chance to not only get that top 5 or win, but could go out there and cash us out on a lot of GPPs. I came pretty close, had a lot of Auburn, Cam Young lineups that were popping, a few guys in that 6-7K range that got it done, and if we had a few other combinations, I think just a little bit of better pairings going there, they could have really had something special. So definitely some misses last week, a few hits for us. Pretty typical week of PGA DFS, but here for the Genesis, we've got ourselves much better players to choose from, a much deeper field this time around, which makes our decision-making process a little bit more difficult than last week, right? Not as straightforward, not as easy to pick out some of the clear-cut values. So with that being said, a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and start off with a look at some of my key stats of the week that I'm using to identify our top plays. I've got to say, the stat model for this week going to be in flux. A lot of it comes down to the weather. This is a golf course where we could see anything from like 5-6 under par winning up to maybe even like 18 to 20 under par. We've had winners like Bernd Wiesberger win the Euro Tour event here at a score of like 22 under. Now that was as a par 71, not a par 70, so that's going to have an impact on that. But then last year with Xander Schauffele, a winning score of just 7 under. So it's a difficult track, particularly when the wind is kicking up. But with extremely receptive conditions this year, and with maybe a day or two of slightly lower winds, I do think you're going to see this golf course exposed a bit as well. So this model could change a whole lot. If we see significantly higher winds than are projected now, we might be even higher on shots gained around the green, might be even looking at shots gained windy even more than what we are already looking at here. But I'm expecting it to be pretty difficult for at least a day or two, and then probably a little bit easier for a day or two. So when we're looking at some of the key stats on here, please keep that in mind, that a lot is probably going to change by the time we get to Wednesday. So first and foremost, shots gained approach, number 1. Not a surprise there, right? The most consistent, also the most predictive stat that we have in PGA DFS. So if somebody's running a model and approach isn't the number 1 thing that you're looking at, you're probably doing something wrong. The buckets to keep an eye on this week is you're going to have plenty of short iron shots, so that's always probably the most important range. But this 150 to 175 and this 175 to 200 yard range, those 2 buckets, you might want to hone in a little bit more on this week than you would for most. There's a lot of mid to maybe slightly longer than average par 4s, 5 par 3s on property. We're going to have them in both of these ranges here. So just a few shots that players might be facing this week, a little bit more in those categories than you'd see at most weeks. Looking at shots gained, windy conditions, in terms of putting, looking at slow greens, you have slow fescue greens this week. Unfortunately, fescue is a rare surface. You don't see it very much, especially in terms of shots gained stats. So not really something that you could pull from. So just taking it regular, good old putting over the last 12, last 36 rounds, and then slow putting. Around the green, that might get even more important if the conditions are going to be real tough. Driving distance is a huge factor at this track. A lot of other things on here, right? Birdie or better percentage, that'll be if it's slightly easier for a day or two. Looking at driving accuracy for a few of the holes, especially if the rough gets longer, given how wet it's been there, and some sand save stuff. So it's a balanced model. You've got some scoring stuff in there, right? Around the green, sand saves mixed in. It's not a week where you can get it done with one category, right? It's not a week where we're looking at like 40-50% putting. It's not a week where it's 40-50% approach playing off the tee like you see for some of the major championships. It's a track where pretty much no matter what your strength is, you can finish in the top 5, top 10 here. So when we're going through the board, it's not going to be as simple as it might be for some golf tournaments, but it also gives us quite a bit of variety with some of the plays we're getting to. So we'll start at the top. We got Rory McIlroy, $10,900. So expensive. You are paying a premium if you're going to get up here to Rory, but based on how he's been playing the last month or so, I think this is a great spot for him. I mean, first off, Rolex Series events, this guy is due to go out there and take one of these home at some point here. He's routinely winning these. It feels like on almost every Rolex Series event that this guy should be like almost minus money to win them. Now, granted, now you got some PGA Tour players over here. It's not just, a strong World Tour field. You've got like the Sky Scotties, the Xanders, the Cantlays that aren't showing up to all of those events. But the thing about this course I like for Rory is that it plays into his strengths, which off the tee, right, distance, we talked about that being a huge X factor. If you haven't seen my course breakdown, there are a lot of corners that you can cut off. And if you have that 315, 320 yard carry, you can take a lot of the fairway bunkers completely out of play and not only, right, avoid some trouble, but shorten holes by not only 10, 20 yards, but sometimes 50 to 100 yards. I mean, I'm thinking of hole number 3, a hole that Rory's going to be able to shorten by at least 100 yards. Is going to be an eagle, for sure, a birdie hole for somebody like a Rory McIlroy, and for the rest of the field, very well could be a bogey hole for a lot of those sort of players. So it's a fine margin off the tee, and guys like Rory McIlroy, and not even all these elite tier players. Like you'd say, like, oh, most of the guys at the top, relatively long, you almost consider all of them almost bomber type of players. You've got to be a bomber plus to take advantage of some of those dog legs, and Rory will certainly be able to do so. So I like that. I like the fact that he went out there last time out, gained in everything but off the tee, which is just so off-brand for Rory McIlroy. The recent form speaks for itself. T7, tied for second. T9, T7 finish. So obviously top 10s his last 4 times out. Did not play this event last year, but has played this event in the past when it was just the regular Scottish Open. And I believe it doesn't have that much experience, but the last time he played here, he finished T13. So has experience at the course, right? Even if it's not all that recent, and posted a pretty decent start here as well. So I like Rory McIlroy at these Rolex Series events. Like I said, he makes a living at these for his career, just absolutely kills it, whether it's a DP World Tour Championship and some of the other elevated fields that you get over there for these, where the Patrick Reeds will show up, right? You'll see John Rahm, right, playing a lot of those Rolex Series events. Matthew Fitzpatrick, right, comes over for a lot of them. Terrell Hatton. Rory McIlroy just kills those fields. Just takes all those guys' lunch money. So I like him this week, $10,900. It's the form. It's hoping the off the tee play comes back. I mean, we can look at the shots gained metrics all we want, but we know how this guy's playing, right? You got 1.3 strokes gained off the tee, 1 stroke gained on approach. Last 36 rounds, right, 0.8 off the tee, 0.8 on the approach. No matter what you look at for Rory McIlroy of late, he's been absolutely killing it. So, right, you're not going to get an argument from me against a Scotty, against a Rory, against last year's champion in Xander Schauffele. But the one that I prefer here, right, and a lot of it's distance-based, right, because he can take advantage of those corners. Scotty can get that done too, but Rory also loves putting on fescue, right? It's what he grew up on. He's used to playing these events over here on the DP World Tour, which is kind of the tiebreaker for me, right? He has so much more experience at these type of golf courses, these type of tournaments, that I think that it does give him that upper hand there. So maybe the ownership reflects that. Maybe he is the most chalky player on the slate. I mean, I guess I could see it, but it feels like Scotty's going to get some attention, given the guy hasn't finished outside of the top 12 for like 3-4 months at this point. It feels like last year's champion is going to get some attention. Obviously, our next core play we're going to talk about here is probably going to draw some attention too. So hopefully it doesn't get too out of hand. I'll definitely still be there on Rory McIlroy, even if it is, but I'd prefer him not to be 30% owned. Next up, we've got Patrick Cantlay. He's $10,200. Real expensive. So you can see the core plays this week are all $9K and above. So they're all very expensive. But 4 players that I really want to talk up, that I'm very convicted about this week. And we got Patrick Cantlay, who finished T4 last year at this very golf tournament. Very similar in terms of form, T4, T14, T30. So at Memorial, T30 would be disappointing for somebody like a Patrick Cantlay. I do think that he's going to be chalk, just like a Rory McIlroy, but a player that if I'm starting lineups with, if he is 20, maybe 25% owned, then I'm okay with that, right? He's a piece of chalk that I'm taking, right? The other 4 or 5 spots in my lineup, I'll be able to differentiate, and I won't have issues there. So the ownership's there, right? Don't get me wrong, but what I like about him is that the ball striking has come along on Cantlay. He's become an elite level ball striker who of late has been disappointing with the putter, which I don't know if we could have ever said that about Patrick Cantlay in his career, right? He's always like elite tier, one of the best putters in the world, right? Week in, week out. You could count on him gaining like a stroke per round with the flat stick. And it hasn't been that way, right? It's been the off the tee play, the approach play that's been carrying him to this recent record of just top 5, top 10 after top 10. And I would say this T30, this T14 finish, some of the worst starts that he's had all year, right? The guy has just been on an absolute fire. Man has been walking flames here in 2023. You can see in terms of projected points, he actually outpaces Rory McIlroy, which is pretty ridiculous to say, right? Total model ranking ranks just behind Rory McIlroy up there. And there's a guy who's in second in my model this week. That's just a small sample size kind of thing, right? So Scotty, you probably guess, right? Number 1 in my model for this week. 2, and then just one other player, right? In front of a Rory and a Patrick Cantlay. So they look good in the model. The Renaissance Club fit, right, number 4 for Cantlay. So in terms of long-term ranking, right, looking at what kind of skill set fits this golf course, my model, my projections really like a Patrick Cantlay this week. And it feels like as soon as Cantlay can find the flat stick, right, go out there, have that 1 stroke per round kind of golf tournament, maybe even better than that, right? Sometimes in the past, he had gained 7, 8, 9 strokes putting in a single golf tournament. He's going to trounce a field. Like, he's going to beat it by 5, 6 strokes. Go out there and just boat race it. So $10,200, I'll be there on Patrick Cantlay, especially considering how he played here last year. Before we hop into these last 2 plays, I'll remind you, for access to all of my projections, all of the modeling that is blacked out on the sheet right outside of the core plays, check out my Patreon page. There's a link down below. On there, you get access to these sheets. You can download them, use them in your own modeling, your own projection systems, your own optimizers, all that sort of fun stuff. And of course, do your own research. On there, everything that's blacked out, including projections, my projected points, modeling over here, all of the weightings that you see over here on the right here will be unblacked out. So you can go out there, use those in your own models, right? Try and replicate it as much as you can. And go out there and have your own sort of process too. So that's the idea on there. Of course, this is great for doing your own research, right? Going through, trying to find your own plays. It gives you an idea of what I'm doing, right? It gives you my exposure to maybe go out there, compare what you're getting to versus what I am. You can tail players if you'd like to, right? It's all on there for your knowledge. So post these on there. We have showdown sheets for rounds 2 through 4, all of the prop content. You get access to the Discord too. Just message me over there on Patreon. I'll get you in the Discord server. All of that for $10 a month. So helps me support the channel, right? Helps me do this, bring this content for free for you guys over here on YouTube, and brings you guys all of those resources to help you out with your own DFS process. So just had to do our little plug there, plug the community too over there in the Discord. A lot of fun, a lot of tilting, a lot of information over there on that end. So make sure to check it out if you haven't already. But plug aside, let's get back into the picks now. Our third core play this week going to be Tyrrell Hatton. So $9,600. And how can't you play this guy? At first off a difficult track, and then also when you have the world's best players together, right? The guy always shows up. You take a look at the recent form, it's always a good place to start, right? T27, T3, T12 finish. You take a look at the event history played here last year, had a T24, which ain't great, ain't horrible either, right? Top 25 finish. So let's not look into that one too much. And the shots gained metrics have been just ridiculous. I mean, gaining across all 4 categories, doing his thing with the flat stick, gaining close to a stroke per round, and then gaining over half a stroke per round in both of the ball striking categories. You zoom in a little bit, you can see it's pretty much the same thing, a slight loser around the green, which I guess we can cut him a little bit of slack for, especially considering he's been electric with the flat stick and still absolutely smashing the ball off the tee. So not really much to say here. I think he's a slam dunk play, right? Kind of like our top 2 plays up top. If we're going to start with a Rory, maybe a Patrick Cantlay, and then get to somebody like a Hatton as our second man in, it's worth noting that that's going to be an extremely chalky start. Now, am I going to have lineups that start that way? You bet my ass I'm going to, right? This is a top tier, nearly major championship sort of field, right? You got to lock in that win equity, that top 5 equity up top. And I think at $9,600, it is just so easy to fit him as a second man in, especially considering how much I like these plays, right? Hatton, all of these core plays, guys have also bet outright this week. Just an opportunity that I can't pass up. So a little bit of a disclaimer on the Hatton pick here. We're not going to have the same disclaimer on the next core play that we go through because that should be much lower owned than what we have here with Tyrrell. But if you're going to start with one of our first two core plays and then get to Haddon as a second man in, right, maybe more aggressive up there in the 9-10K range, you're really going to have to think about ownership. You're going to have to take a few guys that are sub 5% owned to make that kind of lineup work in a large field GPP. Now, single entry, smaller field kind of contest, right, where you're only entering a few kind of lineups, maybe I don't care about that as much. Now, for our last core play, right, I think with Haddon, that's probably enough on him. Let's get the Jordan Spieth, lower owned, right? Because last time out, this guy ended up missing the cut, right? Went out there, screwed us at the U.S. Open. Of course, played him there. Thought it made a lot of sense at LA Country Club. Hasn't played since then. Took the elevated field off right there at the Travelers. T5 finished before that at Memorial, so it's not like he's out of form. And you take a look at the last 36 measured rounds, right? So we really zoom out on him. The guy's been gaining across the board, right? Approach play, his best stat. That is exactly what we want to see, right? Gaining off the tee, doing his thing around the green, and the putter has gone a lot more consistent. We zoom in on it a little bit more, right? That includes a missed cut, still gaining pretty much across the board. The putter drops off ever so slightly, but last year at this golf course, and again, it's a small sample. This guy does not play the Scottish Open very often, right? Last year was the first time that I can remember that Spieth came over here and played this golf tournament. He first off was holing out over the place, right? Was doing his thing with the magic beans and was putting the ball beautifully on these slow fescue greens. He's first off an Open champion. He also has a bunch of top 5, top 10s in Open championships. I mean, the year that Morikawa, when he was nearly winning that golf tournament, right? He was putting a lot of pressure on Colin Morikawa. I believe that was Royal St. George's where that Open championship was. Same kind of greens, right? Same kind of surface. And last year, that was a T10 finish. It was in contention through the first 3 days, kind of fell off a little bit there on Sunday. And I think because of that missed cut at the U.S. Open, and because he didn't play at the Travelers, right, he's not on mind like a lot of the other players in this range, that maybe we get a lower owned Jordan Spieth here. And, if we're going to start with any of these top 3 players, I guess you could even start a lineup with Haddon if you wanted to, right? He's a really good way to differentiate yourself as your second man in. So I had to have that disclaimer on Haddon, right, about the ownership, right, about maybe differentiating elsewhere if you start with a few chalky pieces. Not really the same thing with Jordan Spieth, which is what I like about the play even more, especially for large field contests. And the recent form, right, I know missed cut, but T5 before that, a few other missed cuts. I think he had one other missed cut in there, but then a bunch of other top 5, top 10s, right? Nearly winning like week after week there, like a month and a half ago. So if you're looking for an informed player, somebody with upside, somebody that I think fits the golf course too, Jordan Spieth's probably your guy. And if we're looking at a difficult track, let's say the wind looks real nasty, right? Well, that really makes me like Terrell Haddon. It really makes me like a Jordan Spieth, right? Players that are known for playing well, grinding out difficult conditions. Cantlay, Rory McIlroy, maybe not so much. So my current core up top is assuming that we're probably going to get a few nasty days out there, probably a few days that are a little bit easier. And that's where I stand right now, right? Until we see some massive change in my pool. So I've already taken these 4 outright. If conditions end up changing, so be it, right? I'm kind of stuck between these 4 guys, but maybe we get some additional exposure outside of that. So like I said, all that will be on the Patreon page, all of those updates throughout the week. And it's the best way to stay on top of exactly what the recent forecast looks like. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the core plays this week. Before you hop on out of here, first off, smash that like button for me. It goes a huge way with helping me grow the channel, get this content out there to even more people. And of course, go ahead and let me know your thoughts on who's winning this golf tournament. Now, if you're taking Scotty Scheffler, I'll just say that's a chalky play, but you can go ahead and take Scotty if you'd like to. I'm personally going to try and be a little bit more outside the box with it. I'm going to take Terrell Haddon, right, $9,600, so we're not going too crazy down the board there, but I really like the form. I like that he shows up at the strongest of fields, right, at the more difficult golf tournaments. And if it gets a little bit dicey, let's say the winds get maybe even a little bit stronger than what they already look like, I like him even more in those kind of conditions. So let me know your thoughts down below. Also, let me know what kind of conditions you're hoping for this weekend, because honestly, I could see anything from like -5 to -20 winning, and that's just going to completely change the identity of the event. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be an absolute treat. We'll have value plays dropping tomorrow. We'll have fades and sleepers, our weekly live stream as per usual. So make sure to keep an eye out for all of that content. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, well, first off, what are you waiting for, right? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button, but also helps you out with catching all the content, right? You'll get notified when I'm posting out there, and you won't miss all of that content before lock this week, which I think is going to be extremely helpful for you. So until then, guys, best of luck out there. Appreciate all the support here on the channel, and I'll catch you guys for that live stream on Wednesday.